She followed me home. After our first date, I knew something was seriously wrong when my date showed up at my apartment less than 10 minutes after I left her. The problem was, I never told her where I lived. I had recently moved to a new town and started using Hinge to meet people. That's how I matched with a woman I'll call Kate. She was 30, I was 23. We decided to meet at a small restaurant in town. I got there early and waited in my car. Kate texted me saying she couldn't find the place, so I shared my location with her. A few minutes later, an old Honda pulled into the parking lot. She got out, and honestly, the date didn't start well. She looked noticeably different from her profile pictures. When I went to hug her hello, she stepped back and said she wasn't a hugger, so I awkwardly put my arms down. At that point, I already had a feeling this wasn't going anywhere. Inside the restaurant, things got even stranger. She was extremely nervous with the waitress and kept changing the way she spoke. At one point, she suddenly raised her voice just to order water. I tried to ignore it. We ate, made small talk, and eventually the check came. I paid. I wasn't expecting to see her again, so I just wanted to leave. Outside, I told her I had a nice time. She didn't really respond. She just walked straight to her car. I drove home. My apartment was actually the lower level of someone's house, and I had barely taken my coat off when the doorbell rang. I looked through the window. It was Kate, standing outside my apartment. I hadn't stopped sharing my location with her, but I had no idea why she'd followed me. I hadn't told her my address. I immediately backed away from the door. Then my phone buzzed. It was Kate. "I know you're home." I stared at the message for a few seconds. Then I replied, "What do you want? Why are you here?" She answered, "Answer the door." I didn't. I turned off the lights and moved into the kitchen. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then another message came through. "I see you." My stomach dropped. I looked around the apartment. Then I checked the windows. That's when I saw it. One of the blinds in the backyard hadn't been pulled completely down. There was a tiny gap at the bottom, and through that gap, I could see an eye. She was looking through my window. I immediately went to my bedroom, locked the door, and called 911. I put the phone on speaker because Kate kept sending messages. One said, "Nobody wants me. I'm sick of it." Another said, "You're just like the others." Then everything went quiet for maybe 10 seconds. And then I heard glass breaking. I froze. She had smashed one of my windows. I told the 911 operator that someone was breaking into my apartment. The operator told me to stay in my room, lock the door, and keep away from the windows. Then I heard footsteps. They were inside. She tried my bedroom door. It didn't open, so she started pounding on it. She was yelling at me to open the door. I was standing there in the dark, listening to someone I'd met for the first time that night trying to get into my bedroom. And the only thing between us was a cheap interior door. Then I heard sirens. Multiple police cars pulled up outside. The pounding stopped. I heard officers shouting at her to get down and put her hands where they could see them. A few minutes later, I finally opened my bedroom door. There were several officers in the apartment. Kate was already in handcuffs. She was arrested and charged with breaking and entering, along with other offenses related to what happened that night. I was given the option of pursuing her for the damage to the window, but between the legal costs and everything else, I decided it wasn't worth it. I did get a restraining order. And later, I found out something even stranger. Kate wasn't actually her name. The woman I'd met that night had given me a fake identity. Her real name was Pamela Castillo. I never found out exactly why she chose me. Maybe she was lonely. Maybe she'd done this before. Or maybe that first date wasn't really a date to her at all. Because while I thought I was driving home alone that night, she already knew exactly where I was going. The guy from my sister's date followed her home. My sister realized she was being followed when the man who had been sitting beside her at the bar suddenly sent her a text asking which window was hers. The worst part? She was already home. This happened about 5 years ago, before my sister Jen started dating her current boyfriend. She was single at the time and had been using Tinder to meet people. One night she told me and our other sister, Maria, that she was meeting a guy at a bar a few blocks from our house. When Jen arrived, she sat at the bar and texted her date where she was sitting. Less than a minute later, an older man sat down beside her. He offered to buy her a drink. Jen immediately said no and explained that she was waiting for someone. According to her, the guy smelled terrible. His breath was bad, and he had a crooked front tooth that made him look even more unsettling. But instead of leaving, he just smiled and said he could buy her a drink while she waited. Jen told him, more firmly this time, that she wasn't interested. Eventually, he got up. She watched him walk over to one of the booths. For a moment, she thought that was the end of it. Then she texted her date. "Where are you? Please hurry." There was no response. A few minutes later, she tried again. This time, he replied, "Running late. Get a drink or two without me." That message immediately felt wrong to her. She was sitting alone in a bar, waiting for a man she'd never met before, and he was telling her to keep drinking while he was late. Then the older man came back. He sat beside her again and asked where her date was. He seemed almost irritated that she was still alone. Jen told him to leave her alone. She texted her date one last time. "Sorry, I'm leaving." And that's when she noticed something. The phone the man had left on the bar suddenly vibrated. Jen looked at it. She realized the man sitting beside her had the same phone number as the guy she'd been texting. She didn't confront him. Instead, she told him she was going to the bathroom. Then she called Maria. Maria told her one thing: leave. Just go straight home. When Jen came out of the bathroom, the man was gone. She hurried to her car and drove home. It was only a few minutes away. When she pulled into our driveway, she noticed a car across the street. It hadn't stopped directly in front of our house. It was parked one house over. Jen walked inside and immediately went to the window. She looked through the blinds. The car was gone. Maria and I didn't see anything either, so at first we thought maybe she had been imagining it. Then she told us everything that happened at the bar. We started taking it seriously. Eventually, everyone went back to their rooms. I was on my computer playing Far Cry 4 when, a little while later, I heard both of my sisters scream. I ran toward Jen's room. She had received another text from the same number. It said, "Hey, I'm so sorry. I didn't see your text until I got to the bar." Then another message came through. "I'm going to meet you at your house. Which window is yours?" Before either of us could process that, Jen's bedroom window suddenly slid open. Someone outside pushed against the roller shade, trying to get through. That's when Jen and Maria screamed. Our parents came running upstairs. By the time we reached the room, the person outside had already backed away and disappeared. My dad ran outside, but the car was gone. We called the police. Jen gave them the phone number and showed them the entire conversation. A few days later, the police told us the number had been created through an app and couldn't be reliably traced back to a specific phone. They said they'd keep looking. They never found the guy. What still bothers me isn't that some random creep approached my sister at a bar. It's that he somehow figured out where she lived. He followed her home. And while she was lying in bed, he was outside her bedroom window, asking her which one was hers. To this day, we have no idea what he intended to do if he actually got inside. I thought my date was trying to drug me. I was wrong about one thing. She didn't need to drug me to hurt me. She already had a knife in my kitchen. This happened a few years ago. I was 32 and had recently gotten out of a long relationship. I'd been out of the dating scene for a while, so when I met a woman online named Amelia, I figured I'd try something different. Instead of meeting at a bar, I invited her over for dinner. Looking back, that was a terrible idea. I made penne alla vodka, garlic bread, and opened a bottle of wine. Amelia arrived around 6:30. She was friendly enough, but much quieter than I expected. I had to carry most of the conversation while she mostly sat there and watched me cook. Nothing was obviously wrong. Then she asked me to get a candle. She said she wanted us to have a proper toast. I thought it was a little strange, but I went into the hallway to grab one. I was gone for maybe 30 seconds. When I came back, Amelia was already sitting down again. She said she'd just washed her hands. I didn't think much of it. I lit the candle, poured the wine, and we raised our glasses. But just before I took a drink, I noticed something floating in mine. It looked like a fine powder dissolving into the wine. I looked at Amelia. She was watching me. I didn't drink it, but I also didn't say anything. I remember thinking, what if I'm completely wrong? So I pretended to take a sip and kept talking. We ate dinner. She acted normal. Eventually, she said she needed to use the bathroom. She was gone longer than I expected. When she came back, she suddenly said she had to leave because her dog wasn't doing well. Honestly, I didn't argue. I walked her outside, said goodbye, and watched her leave. Then I went back inside and stared at the wine glass. I smelled it. Nothing. Just wine. I poured it down the sink. Then I checked the house. Nothing seemed to be missing. I told a couple of friends what happened, and they thought I was probably overthinking it. Eventually, I went to bed, except I couldn't sleep. I have insomnia that comes and goes, and that night was one of those nights. Around 2:30 in the morning, I was still awake. Then I heard a cup hit the kitchen floor. I immediately sat up. I listened. Nothing. Then my bedroom door slowly opened. Someone stepped into the room. I didn't move. I kept my eyes almost completely closed and pretended to be asleep. A person stood in the doorway. For a few seconds, they just watched me. Then they turned around and walked away. My first thought was that someone had broken into the house. I waited. Then I quietly got out of bed and followed them. The living room was almost completely dark. There was just enough light coming through the window from a street lamp outside for me to see someone standing near the kitchen. It was Amelia. She wasn't hiding. She was just standing there. In my house. At 2:30 in the morning. I whispered her name. She looked at me. I was terrified, but I tried to keep my voice calm. I said, "Amelia, if you leave right now, I won't call the police." She didn't answer. For several seconds, neither of us moved. Then she reached toward the kitchen counter. She picked something up, and I realized it was a knife. She put it back down. Then she walked to the back door and left. I locked the door behind her. Then I checked every window and every other entrance. That's when I realized what had probably happened. When she'd gone to the bathroom earlier that night, she may not have been washing her hands. She had likely unlocked the back door. She wasn't leaving. She was making sure she could get back inside. I called the police. They came over, took the knife, and documented everything. They also looked into Amelia's background. Not long afterward, police went to her home and arrested her. I never found out exactly what she planned to do that night. And that's probably the part that bothers me most, because I spent the whole evening worrying that something had been put in my wine. But the wine wasn't what kept me awake. It was the fact that, hours later, I opened my eyes, and she was already inside my house.